Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to welcome my old friend Professor Arun Kumar to Catch News. Arun, you think is an economist, but actually he's a physicist. He began as a physicist, and he's one of those rare scientists who switched to economics in JNU. I think Amit Bhadri used to talk a lot about you.
He was my guide.
Yes, he was your guide. He went to Princeton and became even fuller-fledged economist than he was.
No, that was physics.
Princeton was still physics.
Still physics.
Okay, Princeton was still physics. JNU made him an
economist.
He's an expert in public finance. He is the legitimate heir of Santa Claus, as you can see. He comes bearing a lot of gifts, but his gifts are very different. Christmas is already over, but he still brings us a gift of wisdom on demonetization. As he's already said, he's a retired professor from Center for Economic Studies and Planning, Jawaharlal Nehru University. He's an expert on the black economy and author of a bestseller from Penguins called The Black Economy in India. He has also produced Alternative Economic Survey for about 15 years. Are you still doing that?
No. We stopped 4 or 5 years back.
So he will take questions on demonetization, and I'll leave him now in the good hands of Charu Kartikeya, who knows him well enough. You've interviewed him before.
Yes.
So maybe you can start by asking first question, and then we'll go around.
Right.
Thanks.
Thanks. So, Professor Kumar, so this is, let us talk about this 50-day period.
Correct.
The deadline is over, and as the Prime Minister had said, judge me after this deadline is over. So I think the first point to begin with should be the stated objectives and how has this period, 50-day period, fared on those stated objectives. Corruption, black money and fake currency.
Right.
How do you think the performance in this 50-day period has been on these stated objectives?
So as you rightly said, these were the objectives. One was to tackle the black economy because the Prime Minister said this is something that creates poverty. So if we are able to tackle the black economy, we'll be able to tackle poverty, we'll be able to tackle other problems that the Indian economy faces. The other stated objective was that we'll be able to get rid of counterfeit currency, which is used to do terrorist financing. So once counterfeit currency is gone, then terrorist financing would also go. Now, as far as counterfeit currency is concerned, there's only, according to RBI, about 400 crores worth of counterfeit currency, which they have caught, which doesn't mean that that's the amount that is there. My own experience suggests that it would be about 33 times more, so roughly about 10,000 crores. But even if it's 10,000 crores, which is extinguished, out of 17.5 lakh crores of currency in circulation, this is really very small. So this could not be one of the main aims. Second is that once a counterfeit currency is put into the market, that's the time you get financing. After that, the note circulates but does not finance the terrorist at all. So for terrorist financing, you need to keep printing counterfeit currency. So this is not a one-shot thing. It's a continuous process. So you have to stop the printing of counterfeit currency. And since state actors are involved in the counterfeiting of the currency, you can always counterfeit new currency also. So therefore, that process will not stop as a result of demonetization. So let's leave these minor things out of the way. The real issue is, will it be able to deal with the black economy? And this is where we have to be very clear. What do we mean by cash and black economy? Cash is not the same thing as black economy. Okay? This is a common mistake that's made, that if there's cash, it's black economy, and if we squeeze the cash out, the black economy would also get out of the system. Now, so first you earn an income, whether in the white economy or the black economy. And having earned an income, you consume a part and you save the rest. Okay? The savings accumulate year by year, and that becomes your wealth. Okay? Now the wealth is held in a portfolio of assets. Cash is only one component of that. You can have, like for instance, the white economy, you can put it into bank, you can put it into fixed deposit, you can put it into mutual funds. So there's all bullion, real estate, anything, So it's a portfolio of assets. Cash is one tiny part of that. So my own estimate is that the black economy, the black income generation now would be about 93 lakh crores of rupees this year, 2016-17. Based on my EPW article.
93 lakh
crores. Based on my EPW.
Only for 2016-17.
Yeah, that's the annual generation of black income currently. 62% of GDP is what my estimate for 2012-13 is. Assuming that it has not grown any further, it would be this year 93 lakh crores of rupees. Okay? So 93 lakh crores would imply that the black wealth would be at least 3 to 4 times more than this accumulated over the last 15-20 years. So say roughly 300 lakh crores. Of the 300 lakh crores, the black cash would be less than 1%. So roughly about 1%. So roughly about 3 lakh crores would be what would be black saved in cash form out of the total wealth. Okay, so suppose you are able to squeeze the black cash out of the system. You've squeezed only 1% of the black wealth, and this would amount to only about 3.5% of the black economy in terms of the income generation. Okay, so it's a very tiny part.
So Arun, would you say therefore that the policy of demonetizing
Yes,
500 and
yes.
1,000 rupee notes
Right.
was actually based on anecdotal notions of
Absolutely.
black money, not on the real processes of
Correct.
black money?
And assumption. The assumption that cash means black economy. That is the wrong assumption. It's not that way it works. So let me, I was to complete, now we know that even this 3 lakh crore has got circulated. So out of the 15.44 lakh crore, that was the high denomination currency note of 1,500 rupee note, it was obvious that people would circulate their black cash also. So they have used Jan Dhan accounts, they've used banks, they've paid salaries in advance, they've purchased in backdated, form gold, jewelry, using shell companies to cycle their money, declare their profits to shell companies, etc. So most of the money of 15.44 lakh crore is coming back. So maybe 50,000, 70,000 crores may not come back out of this because either it's lost or it's somewhere, some people have kept it, they don't know where it is. So what you're talking about is maybe 3, 4, 5% of the cash, the total 15.44 lakh crore, that may not come back. And that also doesn't mean that black income generation will stop. Because cash does not mean black income generation. So how do I generate a black income? Suppose I'm a teacher and I do tuition and I do not declare that income. That's my black income. I will continue that. If I'm a narcotic drug dealer, I'm selling narcotic drugs, I'll continue to do that. If I'm doing under-invoicing and over-invoicing in my trade, I will continue to do that. The reason is that black economy and white economy are completely intertwined. They're not parallel to each other. We very often use the notion of parallel economy. They're not parallel. So because they're intertwined, cash can go from white to black and black to white. Now cash is not being completely dismantled from the economy. It's going to still be there. So it'll be available in the black economy, it'll be available in the white economy. So even if 1 year you are able to squeeze some amount of the black cash out, again it'll get generated next year as the black income generation process continues. So by squeezing out cash, you do not squeeze out the black economy. That's the problem. So that was a wrong assumption which was made, that cash means black economy, and if we squeeze cash out, then the black economy would collapse. So that was wrong.
Why are you saying that most of this money has been converted into white?
No, not white.
Or it's gone into Jan Dhan accounts?
No. So old cash converted to new cash.
That's right. So
and part of that was white and a part of that was
black money, which was in old notes, for say 20% commission, is got converted into black money into new notes.
Right.
And that 20% or 25% commission is also black money.
Also black,
so the amount of black money in the economy really hasn't gone down. It's just changed denomination.
Changed forms. Yes, changed from old currency to new currency. And the real issue is continued generation of black incomes. Because it is the continued generation of black income, that's our problem. Okay? So if that doesn't stop, then this scheme does not work. And it was known before, because I had written in my 1999 book, why demonetization would not work, because it doesn't stop black income generation, but it has deleterious effects for the white economy. तो अब क्या है कि जैसे मैं अक्सर समझाता हूँ कि अगर किसी के शरीर से आप 85% खून निकाल लें और हर हफ्ते 5-5% डालते रहें तो वो तो कोलैप्स कर जाएगा. तो जो हमारा जो मनी होता है, जो पैसा होता है, वो सर्कुलेशन के लिए होता है, उसको हम खाते नहीं हैं, है ना. पैसे से हमने कोई दुकान में कुछ चीज़ खरीदी, दुकानदार ने आगे होलसेलर को पे किया, होलसेलर ने प्रोड्यूसर को पे किया, प्रोड्यूसर ने वेजेस दिए और उससे कंजम्पशन हो गया. तो पैसा सर्कुलेट करता रहता है, उस सर्कुलेशन से आमदनी जनरेट होती है, रिटेलर की आमदनी, होलसेलर की आमदनी, वर्कर की आमदनी, प्रोड्यूसर की आमदनी. अब जब कैश अगर कम हो जाए, पैसा कम हो जाए, तो सर्कुलेशन रुक जाता है. तो जब सर्कुलेशन रुक जाता है तो उससे ये जो सारी प्रक्रिया है वो रुक जाती है, और जब वो रुकने लगती है तो उससे प्रोडक्शन पे असर पड़ता है, ट्रेड पे असर पड़ता है और उसका कृषि पे असर पड़ता है. तो हमारे जो अर्थव्यवस्था में दो मेन मुद्दे हैं, एक ऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर जो संगठित क्षेत्र है और दूसरा अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर जो असंगठित क्षेत्र है. असंगठित क्षेत्र इतना ज़्यादा बैंकिंग वगैरह पे नहीं डील करता, वो छोटा होता है, वो जब उसके पास कैश पे ज़्यादा डीलिंग होता है, बैंकों में बहुत कम डीलिंग होता है. जो संगठित क्षेत्र है वो कैश में भी डील करता है और जो बैंक से भी डील करता है, पर वहाँ पे ये संभावना है कि आप उसको कैश को बैंक ट्रांजैक्शन वगैरह में चेंज कर सकते हैं, पर असंगठित क्षेत्र में वो कम संभावना है. तो जैसे ही जब कैश की कमी हुई, तुरंत आपने 86% जो करेंसी कम कर दी तो उसका तुरंत असर पड़ गया असंगठित क्षेत्र पे. और असंगठित क्षेत्र जो है वो उसका असर वर्कर्स पे वहाँ के पड़ा. वहाँ पे जो छोटे प्रोड्यूसर हैं जिनको कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री बोलते हैं, स्मॉल प्रोड्यूसर्स होते हैं, उनके पास वर्किंग कैपिटल नहीं रहा. तो वर्किंग कैपिटल नहीं रहा, तो जब माल नहीं खरीद पाते तो उन्होंने वर्कर्स को निकाल दिया, वहाँ पे अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट हो गया। कृषि में भी उसी तरह से सुनने में आया कि जो अड़तिया वगैरह हैं उनके पास पैसा नहीं था, तो जब प्रोड्यूस जब मार्केट में नहीं आ रहा था, तो जो पिक्चर्स आए कि मार्केट खाली पड़े हैं, होलसेल मार्केट वगैरह, तो उससे क्या हुआ कि जो लोकल एरिया जो फार्मर है उसके दाम बहुत गिर गए। वो उसका असर इमीडिएटली जो अर्बन एरिया में नहीं पड़ा कि वहाँ दाम गिरे, पर जो लोकल एरिया जहाँ पे जब फार्म प्रोड्यूस आती है वहाँ पे उसका असर पड़ा और उसकी जो आमदनी कम हो गई। फिर उसी तरह से जब असंगठित क्षेत्र पे असर पड़ता है तो असंगठित क्षेत्र संगठित क्षेत्र से भी खरीदता है। आप चाहे टूथपेस्ट खरीदें, चाहे आप शैम्पू खरीदें, चाहे कुछ भी खरीदें, तो उसका असर संगठित क्षेत्र पे भी पड़ने लगा। दूसरी प्रॉब्लम क्या हुई डिमांड पे, संगठित क्षेत्र खुद परेशानी में आ गया। क्यों? क्योंकि डिस्क्रिशनरी डिमांड जिसको हम कहते हैं वो कम हो गई। अब इतनी किल्लत के उसमें अगर मुझे एक शर्ट खरीदनी है तो मैं सोचता हूँ अभी शर्ट नहीं खरीदूँ, मैं 3 महीने बाद खरीद लूँ। मुझे अपना मोबाइल फ़ोन बदलना है तो मैं सोचता हूँ कि मोबाइल फ़ोन तो मैं 2 महीने बाद भी कर सकता हूँ, पहले स्थिति सामान्य हो जाए उसके बाद में करूँ, अभी तो ये पैसे नहीं है मेरे पास, तो सब चीज़ें होल्ड। तो इसलिए उससे
इतना ही नहीं, कुछ रिपोर्ट्स तो ये भी आई थी कि जो लो इनकम हाउसहोल्ड्स हैं उसमें तो डेली एवरीडे कंजम्पशन पे फर्क।
सही बात है क्योंकि कैश के जो कम होने से तो सब तरह। हाँ, पर मैं तो ये कह रहा हूँ कि जो संगठित क्षेत्र है वहाँ पे जहाँ पे असर कम पड़ना चाहिए था, क्योंकि उनके पास बैंक बैलेंस हैं, उनके पास जो और तरीके हैं, वहाँ पे भी असर हुआ। तो उससे जो नहीं डायरेक्टली और डायरेक्टली तो इसलिए क्योंकि वहाँ पे आपकी डिस्क्रिशनरी डिमांड कम हो गई, इनडायरेक्टली हुआ क्योंकि असंगठित क्षेत्र है उसकी डिमांड कम हुई, उसका भी असर हुआ। तो ये असंगठित क्षेत्र सीमित नहीं था, ये संगठित क्षेत्र पे भी इसका असर पड़ा। और क्योंकि डिस्क्रिशनरी डिमांड मतलब जैसे कोई चीज़ मुझे अभी मैं पोस्टपोन कर सकता हूँ, मैं खाना तो पोस्टपोन नहीं कर सकता है ना, मैं रहना नहीं पोस्टपोन कर सकता, अपना जो दूध है इस सब का, पर मैं शर्ट खरीदना पोस्टपोन कर सकता हूँ, मैं अपना मोबाइल फ़ोन जो है चेंज करना पोस्टपोन कर सकता हूँ, है ना। तो वो जो डिस्क्रिशनरी डिमांड है, और यहाँ तक हुआ कि ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर में डिमांड डिक्लाइन हो गई, जहाँ पे कि ज़्यादातर आपका चेक से काम होता है। और सबसे पहली बात 25 साल में लग्जरी कारों की डिमांड कम हो गई, मर्सिडीज बेंज और इन सब की, जहाँ पे कि उनको पैसे की कोई समस्या नहीं है, वो तो अपना क्रेडिट कार्ड डेबिट कार्ड इस सबसे इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं। जी हाँ,
ये तो समझ में आ गया कि ऑलमोस्ट मतलब जो मोटिव बताया गया था वो फेल हो गया करीब। लेकिन कल एक वित्त मंत्री ने प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस की जिसमें बहुत ही गुलाबी तस्वीर पेश
जी हाँ,
तो
डायरेक्ट इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स दोनों का बताया।
तो उसको भी हमें समझना है कि ये जो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स बढ़ा है वो रिफ्लेक्शन एक्चुअली क्या है। और दूसरा ये कि जो उन्होंने कहा कि क्रिटिकल फेज से हम बाहर निकल गए हैं, अब चीज़ें सामान्य हो गई, क्या ये सही है कहना कि हम क्रिटिकल फेज से बाहर निकल गए हैं? अगर नहीं, अगर या फिर वो हमें देश को और बाकी लोगों को कुछ मिसगाइड कर रहे हैं?
देखिए ऐसा है कि अगर
कितने दिन में ये सही होगी, इतना
तो वित्त मंत्री और जो रिजर्व बैंक के गवर्नर हैं वो तो देखिए नेगेटिव पिक्चर कभी दे नहीं सकते। जिस दिन उन्होंने कह दिया कि भाई अर्थव्यवस्था समस्या में है, वो समस्या तुरंत और बढ़ जाएगी, क्योंकि आपके स्टॉक मार्केट वो एक्सपेक्टेशंस पे रन करते हैं, और जहां ये सिग्नल आया कि जो अर्थव्यवस्था क्राइसिस में है तो वो और, तो इसलिए वित्त मंत्री से आप एक्सपेक्ट नहीं कर सकते कि वो कहें कि चीज़ें ठीक नहीं हैं। लेकिन जो आंकड़े वो उन्होंने दिए,
उम्मीद नहीं कर सकते कभी वित्त मंत्री,
मतलब वो एक समझना पड़ेगा कि वो कितना बोल सकते हैं कितना नहीं बोल सकते हैं, है ना। वो सच झूठ की बात नहीं है, वो मतलब ये कि क्या बोल सकते हैं क्या नहीं बोल सकते, वो उनकी सीमाएं होती हैं, है ना। तो उस सीमा में ही वो अपना बोल सकते हैं। लेकिन जो आंकड़े दिए गए हैं कि आपका इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स 40% एक्साइज ड्यूटी का बढ़ गया, 26% जो टोटल इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स बढ़ गया, जो डायरेक्ट टैक्स 14% बढ़ गया, वो आंकड़े अप्रैल से लेकर नवंबर तक के हैं। तो उसमें सेपरेट करना पड़ेगा कि नवंबर में क्या स्थिति हुई, है ना। क्योंकि जो गिरावट आई अक्टूबर के एंड तक, तो नवंबर 8 तक तो सरकार कह रही थी कि हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था 7-7.5% की रफ्तार से बढ़ रही है, कोई समस्या नहीं है। तो अगर वो चल रहा था तो ये होना है। फिर दूसरा, आपने जो बजट में इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस बढ़ा दिए थे, सर्विसेज टैक्स वगैरह बढ़ाए थे, तो एक्सपेक्टेड था कि आपका इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स कलेक्शन तो बढ़ेगा ही बढ़ेगा। डायरेक्ट टैक्स का जो कलेक्शन वो 14-14.5% की रफ्तार से बढ़ रहा था, जो भी ठीक है अक्टूबर के एंड तक। अब ये देखना पड़ेगा नवंबर दिसंबर में क्या हो रहा है। और जो इंडियन एक्सप्रेस की स्टोरी आई थी अभी कोई 7-8 दिन पहले, जिसमें उन्होंने बताया था कि 40 जो बड़ी कंपनियां बॉम्बे की हैं, उनका जो टैक्स जो पेमेंट था इस क्वार्टर के लिए, जो दिसंबर 15 को क्लोज होता है, वो गिर गया है। तो उससे भी लग रहा है कि जो संगठित क्षेत्र है उसमें परेशानी बढ़ रही है तरह तरह से। और जो खबरें आ रही हैं कि ब्रास इंडस्ट्री जो मुरादाबाद की है वो बंद हो गई है, या होजेरी है, साइकिल इंडस्ट्री है, लुधियाना का है ना, या प्लांटेशन इंडस्ट्री है, हाँ काइट मेकिंग है,
मंजा बनाना,
बिल्कुल वो तो छोटे हुए, पर प्लांटेशन इंडस्ट्री है, प्लांटेशन इंडस्ट्री में फिर और भी है। पर लेकिन अगर मैं इस बात को थोड़ा और कंप्लीट करूं कि जो असंगठित और संगठित क्षेत्र है, जो दोनों में समस्या आई है, उसका और क्या परिणाम है। उसका एक परिणाम ये होगा कि जो बैंक हैं उनका क्राइसिस बढ़ेगा, क्योंकि उनकी पेइंग कैपेसिटी जब कम होगी तो एनपीए जो ऑलरेडी बहुत ज़्यादा था वो एनपीए धीरे धीरे बढ़ने लगेगा, तो एनपीए बढ़ेगा तो बैंकिंग क्राइसिस बढ़ेगा।
ये तो मेरे
बैंक
आरबीआई ने कह भी दिया।
हाँ, वो लग रहा है उनको डर। दूसरा, बैंक से कॉस्ट बढ़ गए हैं। अब आपने लोगों को 14-14, 15-15 घंटे काम कराया, जो एक्स्ट्रा जो पेमेंट आपको करना पड़ेगा, एटीएम है उनको रिकैलिब्रेट कराया, फिर जो आपके जो और खर्चे हैं, प्रिंटिंग का तो आरबीआई पे खर्चा जाएगा, वो तो बैंक पे सीधा खर्चा नहीं जाएगा, लेकिन जो बैंक है उनके और खर्चे भी बढ़ रहे हैं, क्योंकि जितने एटीएम पे जो खर्चे थे, जितने उनके जो क्रेडिट कार्ड डेबिट कार्ड पे खर्चे थे वो आपने माफ़ कर दिए हैं, तो जब तक ये बजट से सब्सिडी नहीं जाएगी वो सारा बैंकों पे असर पड़ेगा। तो वही मैंने इसलिए कहा ना, वो एक्स्ट्रा जो काम जो अभी कराया उन्होंने, जो ओवर टाइम 14-15 घंटे उनसे काम कराया, उसका खर्चा बढ़ेगा और उनकी आमदनी नहीं बढ़ेगी, है ना,
और उनकी और बैंकिंग एक्टिविटी सारी बंद है,
सारी बंद हो गई, इसीलिए आमदनी नहीं बढ़ेगी। तो जैसे कि हमारी माँ हैं, वो करीब 90 साल की हैं, वो बैंक गई कि भाई मुझे अपना पैसा फिक्स डिपॉजिट में डालना है, तो बोलने लगा मेरे पास टाइम नहीं है अभी। तो अब 90 साल की महिला मुश्किल से बैंक पहुंची और वो फिक्स डिपॉजिट में अपना पैसा नहीं डाल पा रही। अच्छा, फिर उन्होंने कहा कि मुझे इंटरनेट बैंकिंग करनी है, हाँ, तो उन्होंने कहा अभी फॉर्म दे के हम ये सब नहीं कर सकते, वो बाद में करिएगा। हाँ, तो यानी कि बैंकों में इतनी समस्या है कि वो अपना नॉर्मल, जैसे आपने कहा, काम नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। तो बैंकों में ये समस्या जब बढ़ेगी तो उनकी कैपेसिटी लेंड करने की जगह डिक्लाइन कर रही है। उसके आगे एक चीज़ और जो है वो इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ है कि ये जो कंडीशंस होती हैं, जब आपकी कैपेसिटी यूटिलाइजेशन कम हो जाती है और प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी कम हो जाती है तो इन्वेस्टमेंट होना कम हो जाता है, तो इन्वेस्टमेंट डिमांड कम हो जाएगी। ऑलरेडी इंडस्ट्री में 75% कैपेसिटी यूटिलाइजेशन चल रहा था बिफोर नवंबर 8, हाँ, वो मुझे गिर के लगता है 50% पे आ गया होगा, और इस स्थिति में इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं होगा। तो अगर आप ये तीन चीज़ें जोड़ लें, इन्वेस्टमेंट कम हो जाएगा, बैंकिंग में क्राइसिस है, अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ रहा है, तो ये इसको ही हम कहते हैं रिसेशनरी कंडीशंस। तो रिसेशनरी कंडीशंस आर बिगिनिंग टू टेक होल्ड।
बुलावा है एक मंदी को एक
तो आपके अभी आप जो बता रहे थे उससे बैड में तो समझ में आ ही रहा है, कम से कम इंडिया के बारे में। इज देयर एनी गुड आउट ऑफ टू बी गेन्ड आउट ऑफ दिस? एंड आल्सो व्हाट अबाउट द इफेक्ट ऑफ इंडियन डिमोनेटाइजेशन आउटसाइड द इंडियन मार्केट?
तो देखिए, ये जो इसका जो असर है, अगर ये रिसेशनरी कंडीशन आई तो इसका असर पड़ेगा कि आपके टैक्स कलेक्शन कम हो जाएंगे, है ना, जो सरकार की कैपेसिटी एक्सपेंड करने की, और खासकर इस समय जो गरीब आदमी के ऊपर मार पड़ रही है अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट की और जो सारी बाकी जो औरों की, तो एक्सपेंडिचर बढ़ाने पड़ेंगे सोशल सेक्टर पे, तो डेफिसिट बढ़ जाएगा। अगर डेफिसिट बढ़ा तो उसका असर जो है हमारे बजट पे पड़ेगा, और सरकार वो क्या करेगी, डेफिसिट जब बढ़ने लगेगा तो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर काटेगी, और अगर कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर काटा तो रिसेशन और तेज़ हो जाएगा। तो यानी कि एक कैच 22 सिचुएशन में आ रहे हैं, जहाँ पे कि अगर जो भी कदम उठाती है सरकार, क्योंकि नोटबंदी का मतलब है कि आपने कैश को जो सर्कुलेशन है उसको स्क्वीज़ कर दिया, अब सारे असर उसके आ रहे हैं, हाँ, तो ये रिसेशनरी कंडीशन और डीपन हो जाएगी। अच्छा, लोग कहते हैं कि अब कैश इतना 15.44 लाख करोड़ में समझिए 15 लाख करोड़ आ गया, तो बैंक्स आर फ्लश विद फंड्स, पर सवाल ये है कि वो फ्लश विद फंड्स से क्या इंटरेस्ट रेट घटा देंगे? तो इंटरेस्ट रेट तो इंडिया में एक तरह से एडमिनिस्टर्ड इंटरेस्ट रेट है कि आप चाहें तो आरबीआई के थ्रू वो कर भी सकते हैं कम, है ना, लेकिन इस समय डिमांड नहीं होगी, क्योंकि इंडस्ट्री ही डिमांड करेगी, और इंडस्ट्री क्राइसिस में होगी तो डिमांड नहीं होगी, डिमांड नहीं होगी तो वो लेंड नहीं कर पाएंगे। दूसरी बात यह कि ये जो पैसा आया है वो पब्लिक का पैसा आया है, और पब्लिक उसको विड्रॉ कर रही है, और इस समय क्योंकि अनसर्टेनिटी की स्थिति है तो होर्डिंग चल रही है कैश की, तो कैश की जो होर्डिंग है तो छोटे नोट और बड़े नोट को लोग दबा के बैठ गए हैं, क्योंकि उनको ये जो क्रेडिबिलिटी थी करेंसी की वो कम हो गई है। उनको लगता है कि आगे चल के मिले या ना मिले। पिछले दिनों में 60-61 तो जो अमेंडमेंट्स आ चुके हैं, कभी कहते हैं कि 5,000 रुपये डाल सकते हैं, 5,000 रुपये नहीं डाल सकते हैं, चेकिंग होगी 2.5 लाख से ऊपर का होगा, फिर कहते हैं 50,000 से ऊपर का होगा, तो इसलिए लोग कैश को होल्ड कर रहे हैं, तो इसीलिए मार्केट में कमी है कैश की। तो ऐसी स्थिति में जब वो कमी है तो इस समय ये सोचना कि जो इंटरेस्ट रेट कम होने पे कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट बढ़ जाएगा, वो नहीं होने वाला है, क्योंकि आपने देखा जैसे कि यूरोजोन में, अमेरिका में, जापान में करीब करीब इंटरेस्ट रेट 0 चल रहे थे, और जापान में तो नेगेटिव इंटरेस्ट रेट भी चले, लेकिन उससे इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं बढ़ा। रीज़न उसका बड़ा सिंपल है कि जब इंडस्ट्री में कैपेसिटी यूटिलाइजेशन कम होता है तो इंटरेस्ट रेट जब कम होता है उससे डिमांड नहीं जनरेट होती है, जिसको हम इकोनॉमिक्स में एक्सेलरेटर बोलते हैं। एक्सेलरेटर काम नहीं करता है तो इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं बढ़ने वाला है। हालांकि बैंक्स अभी फ्लश है फंड से, वो इंटरेस्ट रेट घटा भी सकते हैं, लेकिन ये हम सोच लें कि उससे जो इन्वेस्टमेंट बढ़ जाएगा तो वो इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं बढ़ने वाला है। तो इसलिए मेरा मानना है कि अभी जो स्थिति है, अगर रिसेशनरी कंडीशंस आ गई और बढ़ती जा रही हैं तो उससे जो है वो एक्चुअली नेगेटिव ही सब होता जाएगा, पॉजिटिव देखने का बहुत कम है।
Professor Kumar, so if this move is followed by, say for example, action on Benamis, like it's being expected, will that have any impact on the black economy? And what will be that impact?
See, the thing is, we should treat these as separate issues. Demonetization has no link with Benami. Like demonetization has no link with a less cash or a cashless economy. Okay, so Benami property exists. You know, a lot of people with black hold a lot of property in Benami accounts.
Do you have an estimate of?
No, I don't think anybody has estimated how much Benami property is there in the country. But I mean, what is widely known is that people hold multiple properties in multiple names. So who is the real beneficiary? That is always hard to track. So Benami property bill has been in existence since 1988. You know, amendments are suggested. But the real question is, how do you tap a Benami property? How do you track it? How do you find out who the property belongs to? And that is where the real problem has been. So it's not that, you know, income tax cannot investigate. Suppose it gets to know that this property belongs to XYZ. It can always investigate it even if there's no Benami property, this thing. Because if the beneficial owner is known, then income tax can say, where did you get the resources to buy this property, right? So the problem will come in how do you track it. So Benami property bill, as I know it, does not have any provision of how to catch the people. And that's where we fall.
There was a rumor going around that the government was considering a scheme of electronic property passbook.
Yeah.
Where everybody goes and has to prove that the property belongs to him or her, even a registered property. And once you've proven that, it gets entered in your e-property passport.
Correct.
Now, if they're thinking along those lines, the kind of chaos that will happen in this country would be tremendous. Because a lot of people who have inherited property or where property has not got partitioned for 2 or 3 generations,
Right.
they would lose their property. Widows will lose their homes. Joint families will be in a complete mess. So that e-property passbook scheme, how practical do you think that is? Or you think that's not the way to go about it?
No, I think if you can get properties registered properly, then that is one possible way by which you may be able to collect. But still, the question is, how do you track the real beneficial owner? The beneficial owner still doesn't come out. If I have my property in my servant's name, in my dog's name, in my cat's name, you have to prove who's the real beneficiary.
The cat will have to go and say, this is my property.
This is my property,
and
yeah.
if you can't prove it,
But then,
you lose it.
Yeah.
these things take us a little, away from the
Demonetization.
what we should be talking about, because essentially at this point of time, let us try to understand what this 50-day period was about. I mean, going into the future, what prospective steps the government may take or may not take.
It's connected, Charu, because
but
if black money is a process,
chasing those questions, we'll lose a lot of important questions for this 50-day period.
Black money is and black economy, as you said, is a process of generation. It's a continuous process. Benami property is a product of that process. You've not tackled that.
Yeah.
So you've tackled only the cash part.
Yeah.
That's also black money.
That's already been established.
So
Yeah.
Prime Minister is saying, since all the money has now come back into the banks, so now we can track it. Who has deposited, if it's been legitimately deposited or illegitimately. Do you think we have the wherewithal to do all that?
No. So, as you rightly say, suppose there are 20 crore Jan Dhan accounts. There are a large number of other accounts that are there with people. The income tax department does not have the wherewithal to track all these accounts. If you look at it, the number of taxpayers, their number has increased from like 12 million to 52 million from 1998-99 to the present, according to the 2012-13 data. After that, we don't know, we don't have the full data. Now, as the number has increased, the percentage of accounts that are audited is falling. Because the income tax department doesn't have the capacity to audit this large number of accounts. So, some like 1 or 2% is what is audited, the rest just go through. And there also, because of the massive corruption that is there in the system, and I can mention that in our 1984 study for the Central Board of Direct Taxes, we sent out a questionnaire to all the commissioners and chief commissioners of income tax, and they said that 95% of their department is corrupt. Now today that number could be 99%. Okay. Now with such a leaky system, you are trying to track people who have Benami property, people who have other kinds of illegal wealth, etc., or who have put money in the banks, and you're trying to track them. So it's a problem. Second point is that how much cash do most people have? Okay, if you take an economy of 17.5 lakh crores of cash in circulation, and we have 125 crore people, the average will come to about 12,000 rupees per person. Okay. Now, assume that it's not held by the common man. Huh? It's held by the 3% who have large black incomes. Huh? So, therefore, this number would climb to about 75,000 rupees. Huh? So, this is way below the 2.5 lakh limit. Huh? So, you've set a limit saying that only where the deposit is more than 2.5 lakh, you do it. So, this doesn't mean that some may not have 20 crores, but if some have 20 crores, then how many people have to have 20 crore within the 2 lakh crore? 10,000 people. So, you're not talking about lakhs of people or crores of people, you're talking about 10,000 people. But even 10,000 would not be there because other people will hold small amounts of black cash, 20,000, 40,000, 50,000. So, therefore, it's not as if there's a huge number of people depositing huge sums of money which are black cash, right? So, this notion that, cash is black, and once we catch the cash, we'll be able to check the black economy, those notions have to be checked against the reality. The reality is 17.5 lakh crores of total currency in circulation, large denomination currency notes 15.44 lakh crores, and likelihood that only 3 lakh crores are really the black cash. Okay, it's not a huge sums of money.
I have a really layperson sort of question at this juncture. You have basically established that these past 50 days have not been about going after black money. What do you think was the real reason as to why the demonetization was established by the government?
Okay, so there was a wrong assumption that cash means black economy. This was the wrong understanding, and behind that, there's the Arth Kranti of Pune, which had circulated this idea that if you do demonetization, then it would really work to check the black economy because they believe that that's the way it works. Okay? So that was a wrong assumption. But when politicians take a decision, they don't take a decision only on this, but they also have a political motive. Okay? And there was a political motive that I could understand. Maybe others with better political sense would understand it better. But the idea was that they had promised 15 lakh rupee per family as soon as they come to power. And they've been taunted all along. It's been used. And Mr. Modi's sarkar has been said to be a suit boot ki sarkar. So it's a pro-rich image. So you have to try and establish an image which is different from that, which is a pro-poor image. So this scheme, it was thought, would be like a Robin Hood scheme. That we take from these wrong people, the corrupt people, and we'll give to the poor people. So it was expected that suppose 3 to 4 lakh crore doesn't come back, then that could act as a dividend which the RBI could give to the budget, and that could then be put in the Jan Dhan account. That was the initial rumor that was floating. So that would not happen. Not only that, there's another problem.
It has become a sort of a reverse Robin
Hood. So poor are in trouble. Poor are in real trouble. So those who never made black incomes, they are standing in queues. Those who made black incomes are still... They are circulating their money, or they're in league with the corrupt people, they are getting their money out, So in other words, people who never really created the problem of black economy, they are the ones in trouble. But also let me say, can there be a dividend from the Reserve Bank of India to the Government of India, which can then be distributed? Okay. So of the 15.44 lakh crores, you have to print the currency again, because you've promised people that you'll pay. On the note it is written, I promise to pay 100 rupees, So that promise has to be kept. And because people are now not believing so much in the banking system, people are going to hold more currency than they held earlier. Okay? So of the 15.44 lakh crores, my suspicion is about 8 to 9 lakh crore would have been working capital with the businesses. So balance would be about 6 lakh crores, which would be with the households. Of that also 3 to 4 lakh crore would be on white account, and 2 to 3 lakh crore would be in on black account. Now all of them will hold more cash. Okay, because you don't know when the situation will turn around. So the RBI may have to print more than 15.44 lakh crores as currency. If it doesn't do that, then the problem of shortage will continue, and as long as the problem of shortage continues, then the bad impact on the economy, that would continue. So rather than be able to give a dividend because less money has come in, if they have to print more money, then the government would have to give them more securities, to actually do that. Whereas the idea earlier was that the assets will be extinguished, but the asset side would remain. That would act as a reserve fund, which could then be transferred to the government. So I don't think that's going to happen.
I also want to ask you something in context of Kashmir. That there is this thing, people are saying that there has been no such impact of demonetization on Kashmir. I want to understand this, why has not been like any such impact of demonetization as compared to other states? Why has been not like there any impact on Kashmir?
Then I can vouch for it. There are
Yeah.
no queues there. ATMs are functional, and you can go. There are no queues anywhere.
So that only means that they've actually supplied cash and currency first there and to some major metropolitan centers. Otherwise, there should have been queues, you know.
Or could it be that because there was a band for 5 months, people have found alternate
Ways.
of
That's also
transacting?
possible that people are transacting. But, you know, I mean, cash is still needed, you know. After all, without cash, even earlier, how would transactions be
So
going
would
through?
would you say that the impact is greater in those areas where cash transactions are higher? Let's say urban areas, you know, where you go and buy milk every day,
Right.
You don't have a cow.
That's right,
You go and
yeah.
buy rice
Yes.
because you don't have
Correct.
Rice stored
Yeah.
From your farm.
Yeah.
So rural areas and places like Kashmir are less affected, therefore.
Rural
Except
areas in
rural
India are
where,
also...
let's say, it happened during the sowing season. So I
Correct,
suppose the
correct.
impact would be higher in rural areas where there was sowing going
And
on.
also because the harvest was coming in and that could not move to the bandi. Okay, so the farmers could not get cash, which then they could not use to buy whatever their other day-to-day needs are. So, you know, in the rural areas also there was initial... So my wife went just now to a village near Pune for some other work. And when she went to the village near Pune, there she found only 4 or 5 people. So she asked, where is everybody? So they said everybody's gone to stand in queues in the bank. And this was just 10 days back. Okay, so even in rural areas, because bank branches are far away, you know, people are queuing up still now. And you see the situation may have eased in the last 1 week, but from the first onward when salary payments again take place, then we'll have to see how much the queues have shortened. Okay, so yes, more currency is going in. So if more currency is going in, some of the shortage should be less. But where is that currency being supplied? Who's cornering that currency? We have to be clear on that. But regarding Kashmir, I probably have to learn from you why, you know, things are different from what the rest of the country has.
Shoujo here has a question.
So the government is encouraging like a cashless economy for
Correct.
the last 50
Yeah.
days. And as you just said, like you need cash in an economy. So what do you think, what are the economic costs and benefits of being a cashless economy? And a related question, so for example, you need to understand the velocity of money, which is difficult to assume. So do you think that is also another reason the government is like encouraging a cashless economy, because the RBI doesn't know how much cash do you need to print or how much like a 500 note changes hands. So do you think, I mean, this can also be the reason?
Also explain to people what velocity of
Yeah.
money is.
So the velocity of circulation means that when you get a currency note, then you spend it, and how much time that is spent in the year. So that becomes the velocity of circulation of money. And velocity of circulation is important because cash is only one component of money. So it is when it's circulated through banks and other things that creates the total money supply. So that's why you have different measures of money supply, whether it's called M0 or M1 or M2 or M3 going up to M6. Huh? So there are different measures because different kinds of transactions require different kind of things. So if you can use a check, you can use a credit card, you know, that means you don't have cash but you're circulating money. So money can be created. Now what the government is saying is that cash should be less. But already if you take the white plus black economy, cash is less than what the white economy suggests. White economy, you have for 150 lakh crore of GDP, you have 17.5 lakh crores. Okay? So roughly about 10.7% or thereabouts is the component of cash in the GDP. But if you take the white plus black economy, that is 240 lakh crore. Okay? And of that, if you take 17 lakh crore, then you're already down to 8%. Okay? So which is not as high as would appear because a large number of other economies work at 4%, 5%, 7%, 8%. So it's not that we have too much cash in relationship to the GDP because you're not counting the black economy. Huh? Second is the RBI does not take the black economy into account in its analysis. Okay? And because it doesn't take that into an analysis, so it still talks about the velocity of circulation of the white economy alone, which is an error. Third is when you have to print currency and circulate that, that has its own cost. Okay? So government thinks by moving towards cashless thing, the cost of circulation will become less. And the government again thinks that by going cashless, black economy will be squeezed out. But this is again a wrong notion. Okay? Why? Because black economy can be circulated equally well with other forms of money. Okay? So like for instance, you can give a bribe in white. So like in one famous case, you allotted 1 crore shares which was actually 350 rupees at 25 rupees. So you gave a bribe of 325 crore. You can allot land, the land price may be 1 lakh rupees a square yard, you may allot it at 10,000 rupees a square yard, okay? So there are a variety of ways by which you can bribe, by which you can transact. And as I said, as long as the money is there in the economy, that money can circulate the white economy as well as the black economy, okay? So going cashless does not mean that the black economy would be necessarily checked. Its form may change. That's true. The form of black income generation may change. Rather than use this, you may use something else, and therefore the form may change.
It becomes certainly like legitimized, you can say.
Not legitimized. Black economy is not legitimized. Black economy remains illegitimate because it's illegal activity of some kind that you're doing. So therefore the black economy continuing in different form still remains illegitimate. Okay? But the government is hoping that if all transactions are recorded, then somewhere you'll be able to catch people.
So is there attempt therefore to convert what is known as the informal sector into a formal sector? Again, because based on anecdotal evidence, in the informal sector, taxes are not paid, whether they are direct or indirect taxes. So if you can convert those into cashless transactions, they become transactions in the formal sector and therefore are more amenable to monitoring.
Okay, so there are two divisions in two ways of dividing the economy. One is the formal informal, the other is the unorganized organized. Okay. Now, why is there such a large unorganized sector? Unorganized sector employment, as you know, is 94%. Organized sector employment is only 6%. Okay. The reason the unorganized sector is so large is because the employment generation in the organized sector is almost not there. So you had in the private organized sector employment of 7.5 million in 1991, and today it's 9.5 million. Where the workforce has increased from 250 million to 450 million. So when the workforce has increased by 200 million, you've generated 2 million jobs in the organized sector, private organized sector. And the public sector is flat. So in the total organized sector, you've hardly generated any jobs. Huh? So the unorganized sector is the residual sector. And that residual sector is not going to become formal. Because the definition of formal informal is meaning government registration. So only units which employ more than 10 people, okay, with power, or with 20 people without power, only those are the registered units which become formal. Now that definition doesn't change. Okay, so it's not that suddenly the informal sector will become formal because now they are doing cashless transaction. They will remain informal, they will remain unorganized. Okay, so this idea that somehow the informal will become formal and therefore they'll start doing transactions in, by electronic means or by other means, that I don't think follows. Okay, that's a misplaced kind of a thing. But yes, there are a lot of economists who are pushing that idea that actually informal will become formal, they'll enter the formal net, and therefore things will change. So I don't think that's
कवर द स्टेटेड ऑब्जेक्टिव फुलफिल नहीं हुआ। अच्छा अरुण जी, आम आदमी जो देख रहा है उसके पर्सपेक्टिव से एक सवाल मेरे ज़हन में आता है। आपने पहले मुझे कई बार ये बताया है कि सरकार की, किसी भी सरकार की जो भी आती है सत्ता में, उसकी मंशा है कि नहीं ब्लैक इकोनॉमी के खिलाफ एक्ट करने की। ये कई चीज़ों से दिखता है, उसमें से एक होता है कि आप एक्शन ले रहे हैं कि नहीं, जो इन्फॉर्मेशन आपके पास अवेलेबल है उसके ऊपर। जैसे आपने बताया था कि वो स्विस वाली लिस्ट थी, उस पर आपने कुछ एक्शन लिया या नहीं लिया। हवाला ऑपरेटर्स के बारे में आपको पता रहता है, आप उनके खिलाफ एक्शन लेते हैं या नहीं लेते हैं। पिछले लगभग महीने भर में या इस 50 दिन की अवधि में हम देखें तो रेड्स बहुत सारी हुई हैं। कहीं आईटी रेड, कहीं ईडी की रेड, कहीं सीबीआई की रेड, बहुत सारी रेड्स हो रही हैं। चीफ सेक्रेटरी लेवल पे रेड हो गई। हाँ, और सीबीडीटी कह रहा है कि 1000 करोड़ कुछ
4000 करोड़ रुपए,
4000 करोड़ रिकवर किया उन्होंने, बुलियन अलग से है। ये सब जो रेड्स हैं, ये सब जो एक्शन है, क्या ये अनप्रेसिडेंटेड है? डज दिस मीन कि कुछ बहुत सॉलिड क्रैकडाउन हो रहा है? क्या जो एक्चुअली जो लोग रिस्पॉन्सिबल हैं ब्लैक इकोनॉमी के लिए हिंदुस्तान में, उन पर रेड हो रही हैं?
देखिए, ये बात तो सही है कि इस समय एक्टिविटी हो रही है, क्योंकि रोज़ अखबारों में रिपोर्ट हो रहा है और इतना रिपोर्टिंग तो पहले हुआ नहीं जितना इस समय हो रहा है। तो कुछ तो एक्शन हो रहा है, लेकिन इसको पर्सपेक्टिव में रखना पड़ेगा। अगर 4000 करोड़ रुपया सामने आया है तो हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था में ब्लैक इकोनॉमी तो 93 लाख करोड़ है। तो 93 लाख करोड़ में 4000 करोड़ रुपए अगर आता भी है तो ऐसा नहीं कि वो अनप्रेसिडेंटेड है। फिर जो हवाला ऑपरेटर्स हैं, जैसे आपने कहा, हवाला ऑपरेटर्स को इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज ट्रैक करती रहती हैं। उनको पता है कहाँ पे भेंडी बाज़ार में, कहाँ पे जो फार्म हाउसेज पे दिल्ली के बाहर, चांदनी चौक पे, कहाँ जो कोलकाता में, ये सारी इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज को पता है, उनको पता है। तो ये एक्टिविटी और ज़्यादा तेज़ हो सकती थी, है ना। ये मतलब अगर तो होता तो हम सुनने में आता कि 10,000 करोड़ रुपये अभी तक निकल आया। ये सिर्फ 4000 करोड़ रुपये तक सीमित नहीं रहता, 10,000 करोड़ रुपये निकल आना चाहिए था अभी तक। हाँ, और उसी तरह जो पकड़ में आते, क्योंकि जो इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज ये भी ट्रैक करती रहती है कौन लोग ये हवाला हाउसेस को विजिट करते हैं, कहाँ जाते हैं, तो लोगों को भी पकड़ा जा सकता था। तो वो भी कोई ऐसा नहीं आया कि कोई बड़े बड़े लोगों को पकड़ा गया है अभी तक। दूसरी बात, जैसे आपने कहा कि बैंकिंग सीक्रेसी, जो हमारा HSBC है उसका हमें क्या समझ में आया, उससे ये समझ में आता है कि जो हमारे जो मल्टीनेशनल बैंक हैं और जो इंडियन प्राइवेट बैंक हैं वो हवाला करते हैं इन द नेम ऑफ हाई नेटवर्थ इंडिविजुअल्स। वो उनका पैसा देश से बाहर निकालते हैं और देश से वापस लाते हैं। इस पे कोई एक्टिविटी नहीं हुई है।
पर इसमें हुई है ना, HSBC तो पकड़ा गया है ना
नहीं, पकड़ा तो गया, पर आज तक क्या उसमें किया, कुछ उसको एक्शन नहीं हुआ है ना।
इंडिया में पकड़ा गया है।
नहीं पकड़ा,
आप पैसा जमा कराइए, किसी और के नाम पे ज़ूरिख में अकाउंट खुल जाता है। जब
ये तो इन्फॉर्मेशन आ गई, पर HSBC पे एक्शन नहीं हुआ HSBC, बल्कि HSBC कह रहा है कि हम यहाँ पे ऑपरेशंस कम कर देंगे। उन्होंने कम कर दिए, लेकिन
क्यों नहीं कैंसिल हुआ?
वही क्यों नहीं, जब वो, और वो HSBC नहीं, ज़्यादातर मल्टीनेशनल बैंक्स और ज़्यादातर इंडियन बैंक जैसे ICICI, वो भी मल्टीनेशनल हो गए, उनकी भी होल्डिंग अब 80% तो जो बाहर की है। तो इसलिए जो हमारे प्राइवेट इंडियन बैंक्स हैं वो भी एक तरह से मल्टीनेशनल बैंक हो गए और सब हाई नेटवर्थ इंडिविजुअल के नाम पे उनके अकाउंट में पैसा इधर से उधर कराते हैं। अब जैसे LGT बैंक है, उसकी जो मिस्टर जो वो क्लाइबे एक थे, वो LGT बैंक के एम्प्लॉय, उन्होंने डिस्क चोरी कर ली और वो जर्मन सरकार को 4 मिलियन यूरो में बेच दी। उसमें अमेरिकन नाम थे, फ्रेंच नाम थे, ब्रिटिश नाम थे, इंडियन, सबको जर्मन सरकार ने फ्री दे दिया। लेकिन इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ने मना कर दिया, हम नहीं लेंगे। जब
यूपीए ने भी नहीं लिया और एनडीए ने भी नहीं लिया।
यूपीए ने नहीं लिया, फिर सुप्रीम कोर्ट के प्रेशर में उन्होंने UPA 2 के दौरान लिया। ओके, लेकिन तब तक बहुत देर हो गई थी, वो तो 2007 की लिस्ट थी। उसी तरह मिस्टर फावियानी ने HSBC की जो लिस्ट वो जो चोरी की थी वो फ्रेंच गवर्नमेंट को दी, वो भी इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ने नहीं ली। और जब जो 2011 में आके तब उन्होंने लिस्ट ली है उससे, तब भी उन्होंने पूरा इन्वेस्टिगेशन नहीं किया। फावियानी ने कहा जो नाम आए वो तो 1% भी नाम नहीं आए हैं, तो उनसे फिर भी नहीं लिया गया। फिर जूलियन असांज बोलते रहे कि मेरे पास सारा जो है स्विस बैंकों का डेटा है, क्योंकि एक मिस्टर एल्मर थे, उन्होंने वो डेटा चोरी कर लिया, एल्मर को स्विस गवर्नमेंट ने पकड़ लिया। तो इसलिए वो जूलियन असांज ने उसको रिलीज़ नहीं किया लिस्ट को, पर लेकिन वो इंडियन गवर्नमेंट से जो कह रहे थे कि हम आपको दे सकते हैं वो डेटा, आप उसको तहकीकात करिए। इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ने नहीं लिया। तो अगर आप देखें तो पिछले जो 10 साल में जो भी चोरी करके डेटा आया है, अब वो चाहे पैनामा पेपर्स का डेटा तो जर्नलिस्ट ने निकाला, वो कोई सरकार ने नहीं निकाला। जो सेकंड लिस्ट आई HSBC की, वो भी जर्नलिस्ट ने निकाला, वो सरकार ने नहीं निकाला। तो नहीं, सरकारों का मंशा नहीं रही है कि इस प्रॉब्लम से डील करें। हाँ? ये मतलब मैं कहना चाह रहा
मैं आज सब वही कहीं देख रहा था कि एक तो ये जो रेड हुई जिससे लग रहा है कि सरकार चौकन्ना है और ब्लैक मनी को या जहाँ के भी होड़ हो रहा है उसको पकड़ने के लिए तत्पर है। लेकिन एक खतरा ये कई लोग जता रहे हैं कि जिस तरह से सरकार की पूरी कवायद है और ये कहीं ना कहीं हमको एक बार फिर से उस एरा में ले जाती है।
सही बात है।
हाँ, इंस्पेक्टर राज,
बिल्कुल सही बात है।
जहाँ पे कि ब्यूरोक्रेटिक हमारे ऊपर कंट्रोल होगा।
बिल्कुल,
खान पान से लेके पहनने ओढ़ने से लेके खर्च से लेके हर चीज एक सरकारी नेता। तो ये कितना बड़ा खतरा है?
ये तो बहुत बड़ा खतरा है, क्योंकि जैसे मैंने कहा कि हमारा तो इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट में जिस तरह की जो खबरें आती हैं कि जितना बड़े लेवल पे करप्शन है, और वही अब जो एजेंसी होगी जो इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करेगी। उसी तरह पुलिस होगी, जहाँ पे कि हमें सबको पता है कि सारे बड़े शहरों में हफ्ता सिस्टम चलता है। हाँ, तो एक जब मैंने इंटरव्यू किया फॉर्मर होम सेक्रेटरी को अपनी किताब के लिए, तो उन्होंने कहा कि एवरी एडिशनल पुलिस स्टेशन इन दिल्ली मीन्स मोर क्राइम, क्योंकि वो जो SHO की पोस्ट ऑक्शन होती है और हर बीट कांस्टेबल का एक वो टारगेट होता है कि इतना कलेक्ट करना है। तो जितनी इलीगल एक्टिविटी उसके जो क्षेत्र में होगी उतना हफ्ता ज़्यादा कलेक्ट करेगा। तो जो ऐसे हमारे जो ब्यूरोक्रेटिक सिस्टम है, जो इनकम टैक्स का सिस्टम है, जो इतना लीकी है, अगर वो इतना जो गड़बड़ करेगा और उसी एजेंसी को आप देंगे कि भाई अब आप सबको पकड़ो, तो वो तो पैसा बनाने का जरिया बन जाएगा, उनके लिए एक और साधन बन जाएगा। तो इसलिए ये तो बहुत डेंजरस मामला है। पर लेकिन सवाल ये भी है कि आपको क्या करना चाहिए, है ना, क्योंकि आपके पास जो सिस्टम है वही इतना गलत है और वही आपका इंस्ट्रूमेंट बन जाएगा, तो आप कैसे इस समस्या से डील करेंगे? तो ये मतलब कहाँ पे ये चिकन एंड एग वाली जो समस्या है।
Let me ask you this. If the government hadn't gone for demonetization,
Right,
and it wanted to control
correct,
the black economy, convert it into white, because you are on record saying that if the two economies become white, India's growth rate would be 12% or more.
Right, correct. Current rate would be
12%. Now, what should the government have done?
Okay, so there are long term, medium term, and short term. Okay, because ultimately the problem is what I have argued, that if black economy is 62% of GDP, then it has to be systematic and systemic. It's not anecdotal. So if I'm, generating, say, from sugar industry, some black income, then I will do it with every truck leaving the factory gate. It's not that one day I do it, next day I don't do it, with one truck I do it, with next truck. No, it's a system. So how I generate black income is a system. And therefore, it is systematic and systemic. So how can illegality become systematic and systemic on such a large scale? Only when the instrumentalities of the state are a party to it. So therefore, there's a triad of the corrupt businessman, the corrupt political class, and the corrupt executive. And the corrupt executive consists of the bureaucracy and the police and the income tax and all these people. So this triad is what circulates the black economy. So you have to dismantle the triad. So in India, we've had at least 40 committees and commissions since 48, which have gone into different aspects of the black economy. So in 48 we had a committee, then Caldor came in 1955, then Santhanam in 64, Vanchu in 70, Dagli committee, LK Jha committee, and latest being the 3 committees that were set up under the 3 institutes, the report of which has not been made public. So we've had 40 committees and commissions. They made thousands of suggestions. Vanchu committee is rich with suggestions, and we've implemented hundreds of them. So we brought down the tax rate. In 1971, when Mrs. Gandhi was the finance minister, the highest tax rate was 97.5%. It has now come down to 30%. We brought down controls. After 1991, MRTP gone, FERA gone, small scale reservation gone, licensing gone. Whatever in the 80s businesses wanted, that was done. We've had voluntary disclosure scheme 6 times. We've had bearer bond scheme. We've had all kinds of things. And yet the black economy continues to go. And the reason is that black economy is not there for a technical reason. It's a political question. The political question is, how do you dismantle this triad? If you don't dismantle the triad, then you have no solution to it. By doing these technical things, like demonetization, voluntary disclosure scheme, etc. So in fact, voluntary disclosure scheme is counterproductive. The CAG report on the 1997 scheme, which was supposed to be quite successful, said 2 things. One is people have become habitual tax offender. So you generate black today knowing that another scheme will come and you can whiten it. So the same people declared their money in the earlier schemes and in the later schemes. So people are generating more black income. Second is honest become dishonest. The honest person's capital is rising slowly because he's paying tax. The dishonest fellow is rising fast. So he also turns dishonest. So therefore it's a counterproductive thing. So many of these things that have been done have actually turned out to be counterproductive. So therefore you have to dismantle the triad. That's the long term. So that's the long term, and that long term, within that, what can you do in the medium run and the short run? That's one. But in the long run, how do you dismantle this thing? That's through your politics. There's no shortcut. We always want a shortcut solution, but there's no shortcut solution. Only through movements which will change the consciousness, which will change the nature of politics, only then is it possible to change it. So there's no short term that you can, do demonetization, or you can do this, etc. and solve it. So look at India, for instance. You had the Nav-Nirman movement in Gujarat in 73, 74. JP movement. These were youth movement against corruption. Then 87, the Bofors. Again, it was a movement against corruption. 92, when the Harshad Mehta scam resulted in large number of middle class people losing their provident fund, also there was a kind of a movement against corruption. Then you had the Anna Hazare Ramdev movement, 2010 onward, because of the various scams that were coming out. But each time these movements have petered out. So you need sustained movements. And you need movements on the broader front rather than the single point movements that you have today, where somebody's only fighting on water, somebody's only fighting on the fisher folk, somebody's only fighting on what's happening in Chhattisgarh. So these movements have to get together. Yeah. So that's the long-term agenda. Now within that, what can you do in the short run? So as I said, in the short run, whatever you can do is where you already have the laws established, implement them. So RTI is very important. But RTI is being resisted by all the upper echelons. And they've found ways of circumventing RTI. So RTI needs to be strengthened. Then Hawala houses, as we've been discussing, they can be tapped. And Hawala makes it easy to take the money out and launder it and bring it back through round tripping. So through Mauritius, so you've plugged the Mauritius route to an extent, you've plugged the Cayman Island route, but people then shifted to Singapore and Dubai. You're trying to plug the Singapore route, okay? But people keep finding new ways because there are 90 tax havens, okay? And therefore you can move from one tax haven to the other in a process called layering. And that hides the real beneficiary. So for instance, if you ask the Swiss government, how much black money does Arun Kumar have in his bank account? They say Arun Kumar doesn't have an account. Because my money has moved through Cayman Island to Switzerland, so it will be counted as British money rather than as Indian money. And my shell company there was, say, something called Crocodile. So they say this crocodile is a company, is not Arun Kumar. We don't know who's the beneficial owner, so it can't be tracked to me. So layering means 6 layers are created. Okay, that's why the Bofors money, etc., could not be tracked. Okay, so therefore, what you have to do is you have to track the money here in India. Okay, and for that, what you have to do is you have to change these kind of rules that you have, where you're trying this, unlawful foreign money bill, etc., which doesn't have any mechanism for tracking, etc., to where you can track the money. Okay, but it has to be tracked here. And here the example is of Jain Hawala case. How did the Jain Hawala case take place? One terrorist boy was caught in a JNU hospital in Ganga Hostel. And this fellow was found with a draft of 15 lakh rupees. And he was asked where did it come from. He took them to Jain and they caught the diary and 52 politicians' names came out. Okay, so if you were to investigate immediately, okay, you could get the data. So in Hassan Ali's case also, the first day the news came that $8.5 billion was on the hard disk. And later on in the press conference in 2011, Pranab Mukherjee said only $11,000 is left because you didn't investigate it. Okay, so therefore you let things off. But if you catch the Hawala, it will mean the entire political class and the bureaucratic class and so on might get trapped.
But where will you get that political class? Because those people
That's right.
who argued that Jain Hawala diaries are not account books but diaries are today occupying high positions.
Exactly.
In this government.
Yeah.
Now,
So
how is a diary? How does a diary have a carry forward? You would remember the Jain Hawala diaries had a carry forward. Carry forward is only in account books. It was an account book. Diary was a misnomer. We had a famous lawyer who's now a very big minister who argued on behalf of a BJP leader that this is a piece of diary. It means nothing.
Correct.
How do we expect him to
Carry forward this? Yes, no, you're absolutely right. So therefore, the people of the triad are in power. And that's why you don't dismantle the triad. And that's why movements are necessary. But I was only giving this as an example where you can get the data. Whether you act on it or not is a separate matter. Yeah. But you see, you can at least get the data and you can at least do that. But as I said, in the long run, it's only movements which change the politics of the nation.
Professor Kumar, movements also tend to give wrong kind of remedies, like this demonetization was actually something which Ramdev has been suggesting for a long time during anti-corruption days.
Correct. So I'm not saying NGOs will always do the right thing, but the role of NGOs is to change consciousness. You see, the consciousness of the public, where public has today accepted. So if you are a Yadav and if a Yadav is in power, you benefit out of his corruption. If you are a Dalit and a Dalit is in power, you benefit out of that corruption. So corruption as an election issue gets marginalized. Okay, and that is where the change of consciousness has to come. That if a Dalit does, some corruption, then it has a much greater impact in a negative sense than the positive sense that may be obtained. Okay, so that consciousness has to change. That consciousness change is what movements do. So movements are needed for that. But coming to the short run, what I was saying, you can do Hawala tracking, you can implement RTI, the whistleblower bill which is getting diluted, and many of the things that you did were through whistleblowers. Now if that gets diluted, then whistleblowers are, as it is being killed, people stop doing whistleblowing. So you need to protect all that, so that at least the black economy doesn't continue to grow as it has been growing, And then in the medium run, what you need to do is you need to make some policy changes, okay, in the larger structural thing. So like regarding taxation. So on direct taxes is very important, especially the question that you asked about Benami property. How do you track Benami property? Make every property pay wealth tax and property tax. Then whether it's in my dog's name or my cat's name, it will be registered. You'll have to pay a property tax, you'll have to pay a wealth tax, and then you'll have to show how much income did you have to generate that. Okay? So whether I can track that dog or a cat to me, okay, becomes immaterial because that property will get registered, that property will have to show an income, and where that income comes from will have to be shown, and therefore you...
I have an additional question. Yeah. So there were rumors that income tax may be abolished or rates and it may be replaced by a banking transaction.
Right.
So how feasible would that be?
So again, Arth Kranti had suggested this banking transaction tax, okay, to replace all taxes. And in fact, the Arth Kranti people have been saying that what demonetization would have been our fourth step. Our first steps would have been...
Actually, their demonetization was a permanent demonetization.
Right. Yes.
These two
correct.
currency knows to be done away
completely.
With
Correct. Yeah, absolutely right. So the point is that to them, this was the fourth step. This wasn't their first step. And that's why they've sort of disowned this move. Okay? They've sort of said that, the interview that came in the Economic Times, they sort of disowned this thing. Yeah. But the point is banking transaction tax. Suppose you levy a 2% tax on all banking transactions. Now your financial sector will collapse. Why? Because on the financial sector, your margins may be 0.1% or 0.01%. If you levy a 2% tax on a 0.1% margin, then your tax is what, 200%? Okay? And on 0.1%, if you levy a 0.01% you levy it, is 2000%. So the entire financial sector will collapse. So that's why when they came and discussed it with me, I argued that, you have to have a graded policy. You can't do that. Secondly, you have to look at whether it be very regressive or not. Okay? And there's a possibility that it could become very regressive also. So if you replace the established taxes, the direct taxes and indirect taxes by a transaction tax, it becomes akin to an indirect tax. And if it becomes akin to an indirect tax, it tends to become regressive. So my own suggestion would be not to experiment with anything like this, especially when we are still coping with the demonetization problem, not even to think about it, because the markets may begin to collapse even further and will create additional problems.
Sir, given that the cash shortage is still quite bad and it's not likely to improve in the near future, given especially the government's cashless push and so many things, these figures which are coming out. So I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit more about the possible effects and like the possible future of the informal sector. The fact that it accounts for 94% of the economy and like you said, it's not going to be formalized anytime soon automatically, even though the government may push cashless transactions and POS machines and whatnot. And also the fact that Make in India, for example, and then you have Skill India. Skill India sought to formalize informal sector workers, and it had a goal of some 40 crore, 400 million people by 2020. And which is, of course, it's related to Make in India, right? But like I remember talking to you once on the phone and you told me about how we need Make for India rather than Make in India. But even for that to be successful, we need to stimulate demand. And of course, in the short term, this is going to have like a major effect on that. So in one sense, is it like a bind? Or I mean, basically, if you could just talk about the possible future of the informal sector in India, which accounts for a large...
My question is connected to this, so I'll fire it straight away and then maybe you could link it with your reply. Is that all the negative impact that you talked about at the outset, kab tak chalega? What's going to be the medium term or the long term impact of demonetization on the economy?
Okay. So, let's look at it. No industry keeps 15 years of stock for production. So when you print currency, you keep what would be normally expected, 4 to 5 months of inventory. So paper and ink is already short. So tendering for paper is going on. Tendering for ink started about 15 days back or 20 days back. So this shortage of paper and ink, even if you want to run 3 shifts, cannot run beyond a month, month and a half. Okay, because you'll exhaust the entire stock. Also, if you print more of small denomination currency note, for which the demand is increased dramatically, because between 2000 and 500 rupee note, you didn't have 500 rupee note, and the small currency was being used in large amount. And there's hoarding going on. So my own suspicion is that the shortage will last for at least 8 to 12 months. Okay, because there's several components to it. One is you have to print 15.44 lakh crores. Second is you have to allow for hoarding, which may be 50% extra demand. Plus you have to print small denomination currency notes in larger numbers than you were printing earlier. All these 3 things put together, your shortage is going to last. So if cash shortage lasts for that long, then the unorganized sector will be hit very badly. Okay, will continue to be hit because the formal sector will be able to use checks, will be able to use other things, but they will not be able to do that. The infrastructure for going even to less cash is very woefully lacking. And the credibility of banking system has been hit, and therefore people will hold more cash. Uncertainty is there, so people will hold more cash. So for all these reasons, the problem will last. Now, if the problem lasts, already recessionary conditions are taking hold. As I said, these will strengthen. And if recession comes in, then what you will see is a problem for the coming 2-3 years, which are not related only to less cash or to shortage of cash, but is related to the production structures, where investment is not taking place, unemployment has risen, banking is being hit, its profitability is being hit. All those things will lead to a problem for the coming 2 to 3 years. Okay?
So, clearly, economists like you are not able to convince the public at large.
Correct.
Otherwise, why would people be saying, although this is a short-term issue, in the long term, it's very good. What you're saying is exactly the opposite. You're saying short-term we might cope, but long-term is terrible.
So, the public actually got fooled by the idea that cash is black economy. That, we can say that I'm a supporter of Modi and therefore whatever he's done is right, his intention may have been to tackle the black economy, as he said, but this move doesn't tackle the black economy.
I actually would want to point out something.
Yeah.
अभी टीवी पे आ रहा था कि Modi has launched an app called Bheem app.
Bheem app, yes.
And
you don't need a smartphone.
Yeah, so आपको स्मार्टफोन नहीं चाहिए और ये ऐप सारे फोन पे चलने वाला है.
You just need a thumbprint.
Thumbprint से चलेगा और
आधार नंबर.
बाबा साहेब भीमराव अंबेडकर जयंती पे एक मेगा लकी ड्रॉ होगा.
हाँ.
कहीं ना कहीं क्या हम डिमोनेटाइजेशन और ब्लैक इकोनॉमी से हटके किसी और चीज़ पे जा रहे हैं?
वो तो देखिए सभी कह रहे हैं कि गोल्ड पोस्ट बदल रहा है ना. जो इनिशियल एम था कि ब्लैक इकॉनमी को टैकल करना है, पहले उससे फिर हम जो शिफ्ट किए, तो फिर हमने कैशलेस की बात किया, लेस कैश की बात किया, अब ये कि अब हमको जो रेड्स वगैरह ज़्यादा करके इनको पकड़ना है, फिर ये सारी चीज़ तो बदल ही रही हैं, है ना. तो चूँकि सक्सेस नहीं मिल रहा है इसमें, उनको खुद ही समझ में आ गया कि कैश को स्क्वीज़ करने का मतलब ये नहीं कि ब्लैक इकॉनमी को स्क्वीज़ करना, है ना. अगर ये इतना सिंपल होता कि कैश को स्क्वीज़ किया, ब्लैक इकॉनमी स्क्वीज़ हो गई, वाइट इकॉनमी पे कोई असर नहीं हुआ, तो सब मतलब खुश होते. नहीं, वो तो ये रॉबिनहुड वाली इमेज तो था ही, जैसे मैंने कहा कि ये क्रिएट करना कि रॉबिनहुड इमेज होगी और वो रॉबिनहुड इमेज मेरे लिए परमानेंट जो एक बेनिफिट की चीज़ होगी. और जो लोग अभी तक बोलते थे कि आपने ब्लैक इकॉनमी पे किया क्या है, उनका मुंह परमानेंटली बंद हो जाता. इलेक्शन आ रहा है यूपी का, पंजाब का और ये सब, उसमें बहुत फ़ायदा मिलता अगर रॉबिनहुड इमेज वगैरह हो जाती. और जैसे कि कहा कि अभी भी पब्लिक तो विश्वास करने को तैयार है ना. यही तो सवाल है कि पब्लिक अभी भी रिएक्ट नहीं कर रही, लाइन में खड़े हो रहे हैं, हाँ, लंबी लंबी कतारों में, लेकिन उनको अभी भी विश्वास है कि शायद इससे ब्लैक इकॉनमी पे असर हो जाए. उनको ये लगता है कि और किसी ने तो कुछ किया नहीं, कम से कम ये व्यक्ति है, ये तो कुछ कर रहा है. तो पब्लिक का जो विश्वास है वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. अच्छा, उन्होंने 50 दिन मांगे, है ना, 50 दिन अब खत्म हो गए. अब अगर सिचुएशन नॉर्मलाइज नहीं होती, अब पहली तारीख आ रही है, जब तनख्वाह के बाद आएगी और जब बैंक वगैरह में समस्या होगी, तब उसका रियल टेस्ट होगा कि वो क्या एंगर में टर्न होता है. क्या
पर अगर रोज रोज लॉटरी निकलेगी,
हाँ,
तो क्या पता ये इससे
डाइवर्ट हो जाए,
डाइवर्ट अटेंशन हो जाएगा कि लोग कहेंगे पहले तो डिमोनेटाइजेशन तो क्या, मेरी लॉटरी निकली कि नहीं निकली.
हाँ, सही बात है. नहीं, वो तो है. देखिए, ये तो पॉलिटिकली तो देखिए डील करना ही पड़ेगा, है ना. जो भी समस्या है, एक पॉलिटिशियन तो उसको पॉलिटिकली डील करेगा. जैसे कि अभी तक पॉलिटिकली डील कर रहे थे कि जो भी इसकी खिलाफत कर रहा है वो ब्लैक मनी वाला है, वो करप्ट है, वो गलत है. तो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज भी घर आई हुई हैं कि भाई हम उसमें नहीं जो होना चाहते, तो इसलिए बड़े डर के वो अपोज कर रहे हैं. जो अपोज कर भी रहे हैं वो जरा रुक के कर रहे हैं, वो क्लियरली मोबिलाइज नहीं कर रहे. और जो असंगठित क्षेत्र है उसको मोबिलाइज करना बहुत कठिन होता है. जब तक कि पॉलिटिकली एक्टिवली आप नहीं करते हैं तो वो अपने आप से ऑर्गेनाइज होता है. वो तो गरीबी कितने सैकड़ों साल से झेल रहा है, वो गरीबी और झेलता रहेगा. भुखमरी वो झेल ही रहा था, भुखमरी और चलती रहेगी. तो जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है वो, पर लेकिन पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज भी इसमें परेशान हैं. बीजेपी वाले खुद ही बोलते हैं प्राइवेटली कि वो बीजेपी वाले भी परेशान हैं, क्योंकि उनका भी बहुत ब्लैक है और वो ब्लैक भी जो उनको जो मतलब अब डर लग रहा है कि जो पता नहीं कहाँ कुछ पकड़ धकड़ होगी, क्या होगा. तो चूंकि ये सारी समस्याएं सारी पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज की, तो इसलिए वो खुल के इसका ऑपोजिशन नहीं कर.
कोई डर नहीं है. वो यूपी में कहा होता है डायन भी एक घर छोड़ देती है. तो वो घर तो छूट.
सही बात है.
सर,
जी हाँ,
छोटा सवाल था, इसमें थोड़ा सा मुझे मिसिंग दिखा, तो मुझे
हाँ,
ये रबी की बुआई का
हाँ, 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 हाँ.
और नॉर्मली मतलब इंडिपेंडेंटली आ रही हैं चीज़ें कि रबी की बुआई बहुत शायद मतलब फसल खराब या गड़बड़ होगी डिमोनेटाइजेशन के बाद. लेकिन कल वित्त मंत्री का ये था कि 6.3% ग्रोथ है. तो इस ग्रोथ को बुआई में, और इसका फायदा हमें मिलेगा पूरी इकोनॉमी में.
कंपेयर टू विच ईयर?
लास्ट ईयर.
तो वही तो लास्ट ईयर तो ड्राउट ईयर था ना. देखिए यही चीज़ जो है ना, तो जो कल आंकड़े दिए गए, जो वित्त मंत्री ने दिया, जो कृषि के बारे में दिया, जो पेट्रोल के कंजम्पशन के बारे में दिया. अब पेट्रोल का तो आपने खुद ही कहा था कि पुराने नोट से पेट्रोल खरीद सकते हैं, लोगों ने टंकियाँ भरवा ली, है ना. अब टंकियाँ भरवा ली तो पेट्रोल का कंजम्पशन अपने आप ही ज़्यादा दिखेगा, ठीक है ना. तो वो जो है, ये जो आंकड़े दिए जा रहे हैं कि भाई 6.3% की बढ़ोतरी हुई है बुआई में, है ना, ये तो पिछले साल जब ड्राउट था और 2 साल का ड्राउट था, उसमें अगर 6.3% की वृद्धि हुई है, तो कोई खास वृद्धि नहीं हुई है. और जो दूसरी बात है कि जो कृषि में जो खबरें आ रही हैं, जो मतलब कृषि से जुड़े लोग हैं, वो ये खबर दे रहे हैं कि जो किसान है उसके पास कैश कम होने से उसने फर्टिलाइज़र समय पे नहीं लगाया, उसने बुआई देर से कर दी, पानी के लिए, सिंचाई के लिए साधन कम थे, तो उसको लगता है कि प्रोडक्टिविटी कम हो जाएगी. तो ये अगर बढ़त होती भी है और अगर प्रोडक्टिविटी कम हो जाती है तो उसका भी गलत असर पड़ेगा.
One question, like this is regarding counterfeit currency. So to generate the new notes,
Yeah.
fake notes, so and the capital expenditure involved in the machines and all, what do you think like can be the expected time, or when can again such a new flow of counterfeit 2000 or like this new 500 notes can flood the market?
Okay, so counterfeit currency is only one part by which terrorist financing is done. You can use gold, you can use drugs, you can use gun running, etc. So if you even replace that for say 6 months, and it's not machines. Machines remain the same, it's your blocks that you create, the new blocks, which is the design of the currency, that is what you have to do. And that can be done very quickly. That doesn't take much time, and the same machines will print out your new notes. Same machine should be able to print out the new currency notes. Okay, so in that sense, counterfeit currency is not really a major problem, in terrorist financing. And also another thing that we must take into account, since I'm talking about it, as people lose faith in currency, okay, they'll shift to gold and dollar. So the rupee will slip, and the balance of payment will be affected. At the moment, gold prices are down because people are not buying gold. They're worried that if they buy gold, they may be caught, and they want to set an example of people that we are catching people, so people are scared. But sooner or later, the demand for gold will go up because people will begin to hold more gold. So that will mean your balance of payment will get affected. If people hold more dollar, balance of payment again will be affected, and the rupee may come down.
Sadiq.
Professor Kumar, so there are expectations that the Prime Minister may announce some sorts.
Yes. Yeah.
So does the economy have the capacity to take such a step at this point?
So at the moment, if you are headed towards a recession and your tax base comes down and your banking system is facing an additional problem, then I think you'll be damaging it further. But I would like to add that every budget has at least 15 to 20 SOPs. The question is, do you do that expenditure or not? If you look at the figures later on many of these, you promised say 10,000 crores, you ended up spending only 1,000 crores, something like that. So that can always be done. Okay.
But loan waiver will be...
No, so loan waiver I don't think will be announced immediately, given the situation of the banks where they're already facing NPAs, they're already facing a crisis. I don't think a loan waiver will be announced.
Loan waiver was what,
70,000 crores.
70,000 crores.
Yeah.
So you need that kind of money for a loan waiver.
Yeah. So now it'll be much more, the loan waiver. So if you had got a dividend from the RBI, which then you could have used to either recapitalize the banks or do loan waiver, that was a possibility. But I don't think there'll be any dividend because most of the money is coming back, and you may have to print more than 15.44 lakh crore because of hoarding going on.